are hearing me, I would like to know. Wherever you are joining us from, please let us know. Wherever you are joining us from, please let us know. Just drop it as a comment. Wherever you are joining us from, please drop it as a comment so that we'll be able to know wherever you are joining us from. And please, we are pleading that you should drop wherever you are joining us as a comment so that we'll be able to know whichever place you are joining us from. Just drop it in the comment. Mr. Wisdom, you are welcome, all the way from Port Harcourt, Nigeria. So wherever you are joining us from, please drop a comment. And if you have just joined us, please let us know if you are hearing us. Let us know in the comment section. Just drop it as a comment so that we can be able to know if you are hearing us, please. And wherever you are joining us from, please let us know. And if you are hearing us, Mr. David, if you are hearing us, let us know. Drop it from the comment section so that we will know if you are hearing us, please. So Mr. David, you are welcome. Please let us know. Are you hearing us? Mr. David, are you hearing us? Please let us know if you are hearing us, please. Let's know it in the comment section. Mr. Snappy, you are welcome. Please let us know if you are hearing us, please. Indicate so that we will know if you are hearing us. Yes, Mr. David is with us and is hearing us clearly. So if another person too is hearing us, please let us know so that we'll be able to start together on the meeting. So anybody that is hearing us, you let us know. Mr. Snappy, you are welcome. Where are you joining us from? You are welcome to Environment and Safety Management Institute training. We thank you for taking out your time to be part of this online training. The Environment and Safety Management Institute is a professional body that has been established to train and certify you on safety and environmental management related courses. You are highly welcome to this class. Mr. Snappy is joining us all the way from Katsina, Nigeria. Mr. Snappy, you are welcome. Mr. Taiwo, you are welcome. We thank God that you are hearing us clearly. We thank you very much. So this evening we are going to begin with Health, Safety and Environmental Management System. Health, Safety and Environmental Management System, what we call HSE-MS. Health, Safety and Environmental Management System, HSE-MS. Now, when we talk about Health, Safety and Environmental Management System, that is HSE-MS. HSE-MS is a system that you use in managing the risk in a company to ensure the protection of its people, the company's assets, the reputation of the company, and the environment in which the company operates. Health, Safety and Environment Management System, that is HSE-MS, is a system. And when we talk about a system is the totality of a whole. So the HSE Management System is a system that is used for managing the risk in the company to ensure the protection of the people, the assets, their reputation, and the environment in which the company is operating. Now, HSE-MS is aimed at integrating safety into the normal business management system of a company. Okay, when you integrate safety into the normal business management or business operations of a company, it gives you what we call the HSE Management System. Now, when we are talking about HSE-MS, this system that tries to look at managing the assets, the reputation, the people of the company, as well as the environment they find themselves in, has so many benefits to the company. One, it controls the risk that is associated with the operations of a company. HSE Management System controls the risk that is associated with the operations of a company. HSE Management System also demonstrates that yes, the company is controlling the risk that is associated with it. Now, there is one thing to say that you are doing something, and then there is another thing to prove that, okay, this is what you are doing. So HSE Management System gives that proof, demonstrates that yes, actually, you are managing the risk that is associated with what? With the company. It also appreciates the synergy that exists between health, safety, and environment, as well as the business objectives. Because some people will tell you that no, this HSE thing is costing us too much, it's making us to lose money, it's doing that, it's doing that. But what the HSE-MS does is that it shows you that this synergy is for the good of the company. And another thing that HSE-MS achieves is that it helps you learn from past experiences. Because when you have an effective HSE-MS on ground, there is this integration, there is this reporting, there is this documentation. So all of these things help you to easily learn from past experiences if at all you have any challenge, or you had any accident, or you have any hazards that were prevailing in the course of your operation. So because it documents and it keeps records, you will easily learn from what? From past experiences. And this is courtesy of what? Of HSE-MS. What are the elements of HSE-MS? When we talk about elements of HSE-MS, it's talking about those integral parts of HSE-MS that help you easily integrate or understand what the HSE-MS is all about. Okay, so those components, those ingredients that when you bring them together, it's the basis at which we are discussing HSE-MS. That is what we are talking about as elements. And number one of them is leadership and commitment. Leadership and what? Commitment. Now, when we talk about leadership and commitment, what we are referring to is that HSE-MS cannot just be, you as an organization cannot just manage the health and safety of your operations or the health and safety in your company, except there is that leadership that is willing, that leadership that is committed to give the results of what? Of this HSE-MS. Another thing is policy and strategic objectives. What is a policy? A policy is that document, that layout that you put in place to define what you want to do and how you want to do it. Now, when you have a policy, when you have an HSE policy, there needs to be objectives. Objectives are those tasks that you are going to carry out to achieve your goal. So when we are talking about policy and strategic objectives, we are referring to any organization that wants to successfully have an HSE-MS. That organization should have a policy document about the HSE of that organization. should be an HSE policy in the organization, and this HSE policy should be backed with strategic objectives. If you have a policy of zero accidents, you cannot just achieve zero accidents. You must be able to put in certain actions that people will take to enhance what? Zero accidents. And that is what HSE-MS has as its component. Then there should also, number 3, is organization, responsibilities, standards, resources, and documentation. What do we mean by organization, responsibility, resources, standards, and documentation? 1, there should be a structured organization in your company, in your place of work. There should be an office assigned as the office of the HSE manager, or there should be a director in charge of HSE. Then there should be responsibilities assigned to that office. Okay? Fixed responsibilities. Not that the person who is there has decided that this is what I'm going to do. No. There should be responsibilities assigned to that office. And these responsibilities should also come with standards. It's not that, okay, you are responsible for doing this, so you can go ahead and do it anyhow. No. There should be standards set. And we have different forms of standards. There are national standards, there is what we call the International Standard Organization, ISO, that has specific standards and criteria for each and every safety, this thing that you want to achieve. And then there should be resources allocated to this office. Resources that will enable the office to carry out these responsibilities. And then, of course, there should be documentation. These things should not exist in the air. There should be what? There should be documentation in this office. And this is the number 3rd element of what? Of HSE-MS. Number 4th element is hazard and effect management process. A hazard and effect management process. Now, when we talk about hazard and effect management process, it is a process for identifying the hazards in an HSE critical activity. Now, this process also ensures that you identify the hazards and the effects of this hazard with a view that you'll be able to eliminate these hazards, or at least control them to reduce the effects as low as reasonably practicable. And that is what we refer to as what? As hazard and effect management process. The hazard and effect management process come as a procedure. The first thing is that you have to identify the hazards that are in what? In that operation. You have to look at the potential effects of that hazard on the workers and the environment. You have to assess or evaluate the effect of the identified hazards. You have to control those hazards to reduce or eliminate the risk or the effect that is there. And then you set up a recovery measure. So these are critical. How do you implement your HSE management, your hazard and effect management process? You implement it at any point at all in your operation. It can be at the planning phase. It can be at the operational phase. It can be at the maintenance phase. But you have to implement your hazard and effect management process. And then apart from the hazard and effect management process, there is also what we call the hazard the planning and procedure as one of the elements of HSE management system. Planning and procedure. What do we mean by planning and procedure? Now, you don't just have to wake up and begin your HSE management system. There needs to be planning. Planning as a stage, planning as a process. You sit down in the office, you identify each and every part of the safety of your organization. You plan on how you get the resources. You plan on how you will manage it. And this is inherent in what? In HSE management system. Then you also need what we call the implementation. After you have planned these HSE processes, then comes what? Implementation. Implementation. It's very, very what? Important. Because there is a difference between planning and implementation. In implementation, you have to go as far as making sure that what you sat down and planned has been put into what? Practice. That is implementation. You make sure that the resources are available. You make sure that the procedures that you want to put in place are there. And after you have implemented, comes the seventh element, which is audit. Now, what is audit? Audit is the situation whereby you look at what you were set out to do and what you have done. What were you planning? What were the procedures you put in place? Now that implementation has taken place, is the implementation going as the plan? That is audit. And after you have done the audit, there is the eighth element of HSE management system, which is management review. Management will look at this audit, sit back, and begin to make a review of this audit and how this audit will benefit, or how this audit will yield the result that was expected of the HSE management system. Any questions so far? Before we proceed, please, if you have any question, please drop your question so that we take it before we move forward. Any question? Mr. Snappy, any questions so far? Mr. Taiwo, do you have any question? Mr. Wisdom, are you still with us? Okay, so in the absence of any question, let's proceed. Let's begin to look at introduction to health risk, personal protection, and management. Introduction to health risk, personal protection, and management. Let's begin with managing safety and health risk. Managing safety and health risk. What is a risk? When we talk about a risk is the consequence that results from the release of a hazard. It is that probability that the occurrence of that event may have what? A negative effect. A risk is a measure of an expected loss due to a hazard in a given area or over a particular or a specific period of time. That is what we refer to as risk. Okay? That probability that the occurrence of an event may have negative consequences. Or it is the measure, the degree of the expected losses due to a hazard in a given area over a period of time. Let us look at risk assessment and risk management procedure. Risk assessment and risk management procedure. Before you will be able to manage risk successfully in the organization, you have to understand these 5 things that I'm going to mention. Number 1, you have to identify the hazard. Number 1 is that what? You have to identify the hazard. Number 1, you have to identify the what? The hazard. Number 2, you have to decide who might be harmed by this hazard. You have to decide who might what? Be harmed by this what? Hazard. Now, after identifying the hazard, who exactly is going to be harmed by this hazard? Then you will evaluate the risk and decide on the precautions you will take. You will evaluate the risk and decide on what? On the precautions you have to take. Then you record your findings and implement them. And after that, you review or assess and update this process if there is a need. Mr. David, I've seen your question where you ask what are the key elements of HSE. What we were discussing was not just HSE. We were talking about HSE Management System in the topic that we just ended. We are talking about what? HSE Management System. And we say that HSE Management System is more of a procedure or a practice or a system that manages the risk in a company so that you ensure the protection of the people, you ensure the protection of the assets, the protection of the reputation, and the protection of the environment in which that company exists. And we said this HSE-MS is aimed at integrating safety into the normal business management system. That was when we started talking about elements of HSE management system. So it was not element of HSE we are talking about. It was element of what? HSE management system. And we said number 1 element is leadership and commitment. Number 1 element is what? Leadership and commitment. Then the second element is policy and strategic objectives. Policy and strategic objectives. Then another element we say is organization, responsibilities, resources, standards, and documentation. Then another element we say is hazards and effect management process. Then the 5th element we say is planning and procedure. The 6th element we say is implementation. The 7th element we say is audit. And then the 8th element we say is management review. So we were discussing this as element of what? HSE management system, not element of HSE. I don't know whether I've answered your question. Okay, somebody say I should explain more about audit. When we are talking about audit in HSE Management System, audit here refers to that process or that procedure whereby you look at what you were set out to do. What was the process of doing this? What was the procedure? You now look at what you have done. So you are trying to check if what you have done is actually what you were set out to do. That is what we call audit. Okay? You look at what you were set out to do and what you have done. So you compare it and then you know, and that is what we call audit. Are we together now? So audit is all about knowing what you were set out to do and how you ended up doing it. Knowing what you were set out to do and how you ended up what? Doing it. That is what we refer to as what? As audit. I hope we are all understanding. Okay, so I was discussing risk assessment and risk management. And I say risk refers to that probability, okay, that measure of an expected loss due to a hazard in a given place over a particular period of time. And I went on to say, when we talk about risk management, there is a procedure that if you follow, it will help you in risk management. And in this procedure, I said the first thing is to identify the hazard. To identify the what? The hazard. So somebody will ask, what is a hazard? A hazard is anything that can cause harm. Anything that can cause what? Harm is a hazard. It can be chemical, it can be biological, it can be psychological, it can be physical. But anything that can cause harm is what? Is a hazard. Anything that can cause what? Harm is a hazard. Now, when we are talking about a hazard also refers to that action, that occurrence that has the potential to cause an accident. So the first thing is to identify what hazard you have in the environment. Is it now not every hazard can easily be seen. We have what is called obvious hazards and insidious hazards. Obvious hazards are those hazards that you can easily see them. For instance, if you are walking on the road and there is a snake by the roadside, you can easily see it. That is an obvious hazard. But there are some hazards that are insidious. They are not that obvious. You will not know that it is a hazard until it happens. That is why it is good for you to identify the hazard first. Now, after identifying the hazard, the next thing you need to do is to know who will this hazard harm first. Who will this hazard harm what? First. Because by knowing who the hazard will harm first, it will go a long way for you to understand how you will be able to what? To solve or remove the hazard. It is also going to help you to know the third procedure to evaluate the risk of the hazard. Now, if you evaluate the risk of the hazard, you should also decide on the procedures of how you will what? You will remove this hazard. Are we making sense? Then you record your findings. You record your findings. And after you record your findings, you implement them. And after implementing them, you what? You review, you make assessment, you make an audit, you review it, and then you update where it is what? It is necessary. Now, before this, I want us to understand some critical points when you are discussing a hazard. The first thing I want us to know is what we call the top event. A top event. A top event is an incident that occurs as a result of the hazard being released. Once a hazard is released, that incident is what we are referring to as what? A top event. An example of a top event include loss of a container, an electrical shock, when you fall from height, exposure to toxic material, or maybe when you are exposed to radioactive materials, or when you discharge effluents into waterways. These are top events. Or maybe an emission. This is a top event. Another thing I want us also to look at is what we call consequences. Consequences. A consequence is an event or a chain of event that results from the hazards being released. A consequence is an event or chain of events that result from hazards being what? Released. Now, once a hazard is released, those actions, those events that happen are the consequences. Okay, now, assuming where we are sitting is a hall with ceiling fans, okay? Assuming we have ceiling fan here in this place, and the ceiling fan is rotating, then all of a sudden it cuts and falls down. The ceiling fan rotating and cutting is a top event, but maybe it falls on my head. That falling on my head is a what? Is a consequence of the event that a ceiling fan what? Detached from the ceiling. So that scenario or that situation whereby the ceiling fan detached is what? Is a top event. But the action now of it falling on my head becomes a consequence of it detaching. Maybe you are driving on the road and your vehicle loses brake. That loss of brake is what is a top event. And maybe you now go and jam somebody at the back. That becomes a consequence of what? You're losing brake. Another thing I want us to discuss when we are talking about managing health and safety risks is hazard register. Hazard register. The hazard register is a book. Hazard register is what? It's a book. This is the book that contains everything that has to do with hazard in your company or in your organization. It's a compilation of the hazard and the effect The book lists the hazards, lists the top events, lists the consequences. So such book or such register is called what? A hazard register. Now you need a hazard register for what we call risk ranking. You need what? A hazard register for what we call what? Risk ranking. You need this hazard register for what? For risk ranking. Now, what do we mean by risk ranking? Risk ranking is a process that you grade the risk that is associated with each event. Maybe those events that have no injury, you will rank them as 0. Those ones that have high risk, you will rank them with a higher figure. So when you grade risk like this, it's called risk ranking. Let me give you an example. Maybe you are in a school, maybe you are managing a school, or maybe you are a safety officer in a school. And then one of the activities in the school is environmental sanitation. And during sanitation, the students were asked to cut grasses, they were asked to pack refuse, they were asked to dispose waste, they were asked to do a lot of activities. These activities, those that were packing refuse, didn't have any consequence. Those that were cutting grasses, some were injured by the knife while cutting the grass. Those that went to dispose waste, some, there were consequences. You will now put these consequences attached to each event. The event that has highest consequences means it has the highest risk. And the event that has 0 consequences, it means it has 0 risk. So that is what we refer to as what? Risk ranking. Are we making sense? Risk what? Ranking. Are we making sense at all? Risk what? Ranking. Then another thing we'll have to discuss when we are talking about managing health and safety risks in your organization is threats. What are those things that are safety threats? A threat is a possible cause that will release the hazard to become a top event. Wow. That possible cause that will release a hazard to become a top event is a threat. That possible what? Cause that will release a hazard to become a top event is what? It's a threat. Let me give you an example. If you have bushes around your environment, it is possible that snakes can hide in those bushes and come out to bite somebody. That means those bushes have become a threat because they are the ones that are releasing the hazard, which is snake. If there is no light within your vicinity, and that darkness is making it possible for thieves to break in your compound, then that darkness becomes a threat. So a threat is a possible cause that will release a hazard to become a top event. There are so many examples of threat. High temperature can even be a threat. Corrosion can be a threat. A bacteria can be a threat. Overpressure can be a threat. High voltage can even be a threat. Things like ultraviolet rays can be a threat. Environmental conditions can be a threat. Human incompetence is also a threat. These people that will say, I can do, and when you give them the job, they will not be able to do it. It's a threat. Sometimes when the design process or the architectural design of a building can even be a threat. Provided that thing can release a hazard to become a top event is what? It's a threat. Another thing about managing health and safety risk in your organization is barriers. Barriers. What is a barrier? A barrier is that measure which is put in place to prevent the release of a hazard or to prevent the occurrence of a top event, occurrence of an incident. So once the hazard is released and there is something that will prevent the occurrence of a top event or will prevent the release or even the hazard, that thing, that measure that can prevent the release of the hazard is called what? A barrier. Another name for barrier is control measure. There are different barriers or different examples of barriers. For instance, if you have gas or protective sheets, okay, or maybe protective coating around a surface, that is a barrier. Maybe something like fence, a perimeter fence is also a barrier because it's a control measure to control access. Or things like pressure or safety reliefs, okay? Something like high temperature cutoff switch is a barrier. Or something like valid operating procedures, VOP, like time delay in the process, they are barriers. Or sometimes when you lower the speed of a moving object or an equipment, that is also what? A barrier. Or when you reduce congestion in your operating area, that is also what? A barrier. Is a control, because overcrowding is a safety risk. So when you reduce the congestion, it becomes what? A barrier. Now, while discussing managing health and safety risks in your organization, there is something we should talk about, which is recovery measure. Recovery what? Measure. Examples of recovery measures like fire alarms or gas alarms or smoke alarms, emergency shutdown systems, okay, fire water system, or something like blast walls, emergency response plans, something like drills, trainings, or business resumption plans. These are recovery measures. There are different types of recovery. You have what is called containment, you have what is called mitigation, and you have what is called what? Restoration. Now, apart from this recovery that we talk about, on the other hand of it, because the barriers or control, we also discuss threats on the other hand. So now that we have discussed about recovery measures, we also have to look at what? Escalation factors. An escalation factor is that condition that leads to an increased risk due to the loss of a barrier. Okay? An escalation factor is that factor that or that condition that leads to an increased risk due to the loss of what? A barrier. Let me give you an example. If you are operating or you are in a state of abnormal operation condition, being in a state of abnormal operating condition is an escalating factor. There are standard operation procedures. So when you leave those standards and you begin to operate outside that, it's an escalation factor. Let me give you a practical example. A vehicle is supposed to carry 3 passengers at the back and 1 passenger in front. And you decided to carry 4 passengers in front and 5 passengers at the back. You are operating this vehicle outside the standard operating procedure. And this is what is an escalation factor. Or when you are, for instance, a generating set that is supposed to be on for a maximum period of 48 hours, you use it for a period of 72 hours. It's an escalation factor. Extreme environmental condition can also be escalation factors. Incorrect operation of the plant may be due to unavailability of updated operating techniques. Can also be an escalation factor. Any questions so far? Any questions so far? Any questions so far? Pet Nature, where are you joining us from? Can you properly introduce yourself and where you are joining us from? Charles Dixon, are you following us? So Pet Nature, how is Oyo this evening? Pet Nature is joining us all the way from Oyo, Ibadan State. Sorry, Ibadan, Oyo State, I mean to say, not Oyo, Ibadan State. From Ibadan, Oyo State, Southwest Nigeria. You are welcome. Mr. Pelumi, you are highly welcome. Any questions so far? If there are questions, let's discuss. If there are questions, let's discuss them. Any question? Okay, in the absence of any question, let's continue with job hazard analysis. Let's continue with job hazard analysis. Now, when we are talking about job hazard analysis, the first question that comes to mind is, what is a job? Because we should be able to know what a job is before we talk about hazards that are associated with what? With a job. So the first thing is, what is a job? What is what? A job. So when we are discussing job hazard analysis, we talk of a job as any occupation or anything that you are doing either for pleasure or to earn a living. It has been discovered that workers in the first year with their new employer account for more than 50% of the workplace accidents. 50% of workplace accidents is by what? Is by new workers, or can we call them new staff. Why is this so? This is because most of them receive little or no safety training. It is also because some perform unsafe work procedures. It may also be because some of them have inadequate or may not appropriately use their personal protective equipment. Now, this is becoming a safety oversight. But one of the things that always also come on board is that most have no prior job hazard analysis. No prior what? Job hazard analysis. As I said from the beginning, a job is any activity. It can be a mental activity, it can be a physical, or both mental and physical activity that has been assigned to an employee or assigned to somebody in the workplace as a responsibility. And this job is carried with both positive and negative consequences based on the performance of that job. Each job that you are going to do comes with consequences, and these consequences may be positive or they can be what? Negative. A hazard, on the other hand, is anything that has the potential to cause harm. Now, in practical terms, a hazard is associated with a condition or an activity. If it is left uncontrolled, it can result in an injury or an illness. Therefore, when we are talking about job hazard analysis, we are talking about a technique, okay? A technique that focuses on job tasks as a way to identify hazards before they result into what? Injury. Or before they result into illness. Or before they result into property damage. Or sometimes worse things. So a job hazard analysis focuses on the relationship between the worker, the tasks, the tools, and the work environment. So ideally, after you identify uncontrolled hazards, you will take steps to eliminate or reduce them to an acceptable risk level. That is the reason why job hazard analysis is also known as job safety analysis. What are some of these hazardous jobs that you sometimes engage yourself in. Maybe you are using a table saw, and this table saw have a missing blade. That is a hazardous job. Or maybe you are using a corrosive in cleaning, or maybe using it as a solvent in cleaning. Or maybe you are working on the rooftop, and this rooftop does not have guard rails. That is a hazardous activity. Or maybe you want to lift 100 pounds of a box manually. This is a hazardous activity. Or maybe you are performing a welding activity. This is a hazardous activity. Or maybe you are performing a medical response activity. These are hazardous activities. Or maybe you are working outside in an extreme weather condition. This is what? A hazardous activity. Job hazard analysis or job safety analysis have some benefits. They include: one, it reduces injuries, it reduces absenteeism, it increases productivity, it increases the morale of the people. Because when they know that, they understand the nitty-gritty of the job and the safety issues that are involved in the job, they are more happy. So they put in more. It protects your employees. It also helps you to set a performance standard. It also makes you to standardize your operations based on those acceptable safe practices and the personal protective equipment you are using. It provides a form of training documentation regarding the employee's knowledge of the job requirement. Now, when we are talking about job hazard analysis, definitely one of the things that will come to you in your mind is a control, right? Control. What is a control? Now, controls are safety procedures or other productive measures that when you put them in place, they reduce or they eliminate the exposure you have to a hazard. There are different types of controls that you use in eliminating your hazard. They can be engineering controls, which are controls that you take to remove the unsafe condition in a work environment. For instance, if the room does not have good lighting and then you put lighting, that is what? An engineering control. Then you have administrative control. These are things that involve administrative work, like maybe changing shift. And then another control is what? Use of personal protective equipment. These are the controls that you can put in place when hazardous jobs are in your organization. So how will you do a job hazard or job safety analysis? The first thing is you involve the employees. Okay? You involve the employees. You bring them on board. You try to review the accident history of the organization. You conduct a preliminary job review. Okay? You list or you rank or you set priorities for those hazardous jobs. What are those jobs that need job hazard analysis? You complete a job hazard analysis using the job hazard analysis form. Somebody will ask, so who is that person? Who is that person that needs to perform a job hazard analysis? Job hazard analysis should be conducted by a multidisciplinary team. It should be a joint effort between those who are actually performing the job, the supervisors, the safety personnel, the maintenance personnel, and other personnel that have anything to do with the specific knowledge of that job that is being evaluated. Somebody will now say, so how? How do you do this job hazard analysis? Step 1, you select the job that is being done. When you select this job that's being done, you move to step 2, which you break down the job into small steps. Each job that can be done can be broken down into steps. A job as simple as changing your spare tire or replacing your damaged tire with a spare can be broken into steps. The first step is that you park the car. You drive off the lane and park. Then you come out of the car. You go and open your boot. You remove your jack. You come and set it. You remove the damaged tire. Then you fix the what? The spare tire. So each job can be broken into steps. So when you break this job into little steps, in each of these steps, you identify the hazards that are in that particular step. A job as simple as cooking jollof rice can be broken into steps. The first step, you go to the market, you buy rice. So in that step of going to the market, you begin to ask questions. What are the means of transportation of going to the market? Are you going to use a public transport? What are the consequences of using the public transport? Are you going to drive? What are the consequences of driving? These are part of the hazards involved in that jollof rice you want to cook. What is the source of your water? Are you having a tap in the kitchen? Or you have to go out and source for water? In the process of sourcing for water, what are the risks? What are the hazards that are there? How are you going to cook the rice? Are you going to use an electric stove? Are you going to use a gas? Or are you going even to use firewood? Or are you going to use a solar cook? Whichever one you are using, what are the consequences? How are you going to have your ingredients in the soup? Are you going to slice your tomatoes or you're going to use a tin tomato? If you're going to slice your tomato, what are the consequences of using a knife? That is the hazard in cooking jollof rice. If you're going to open the tin tomato, which equipment are you using to open the tin tomato? Are you going to use a knife or you're going to use an opener? So each of these steps has consequences, have hazards. What are those hazards? So by the time you put all together, all these hazards in each steps, you now recommend the safe procedures, the safe and the protective measures that should be used. And after recommending, you can make a review. And what are the conditions for you to revise your job hazard analysis? Maybe when an accident occurs, you need to go back to these recommendations that you made and look at what happened. Or when the job changes, you also need to change the analysis. Or when there is a near miss, you know that a near miss is different from what? An accident. A near miss is when that top event happened, but there's no consequences. Okay? An accident is when there is consequences. Because an accident results to damage or injury. But in a near miss, there is no damage, there is no injury. So once a near miss occurs, it means you have to look at your job hazard analysis again. Or maybe when an equipment damages, sometimes you review your job hazard analysis because of what we call periodic review. Let's briefly look at how you can quickly do a job hazard analysis review. You develop the risks for job you perform. You prioritize which of these jobs has to be assessed first. Remember I told you about risk ranking. The job with more risk, the job with more hazards, that is the one you start job hazard analysis with. You cannot go into a factory that is maybe producing iron rods. Then you want to go and start your job hazard analysis in the office of the manager instead of at the production room. So you look at the job that has more risk and start with it. Then you perform your job hazard analysis. And in performing your job hazard analysis, you observe all the steps that were what? All the steps you broke down. You observe each step, you observe critically. You note the hazards that are associated in each of the steps that you broke down. You list the controls that can be associated with each and every word, step, or each and every hazard. You identify where training is required and all that. And then you make your what? Your recommendations. Any questions so far? Any questions so far? I will advise you that after the lecture, when you have rested for some time, go over the lecture again. And where you have questions, drop the questions in the comment section. And we will explain to you everything that you need to understand where you didn't understand properly. So that's where we draw the curtain for today. Join us same time tomorrow for another topic. Once again, welcome to Environment and Safety Management Institute. Thank you for being part of today's training. Do have a wonderful evening.